Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be starting on part 4 of this 66 project, and we are working on doing a 7-inch drop on the rear end. Already did the 4.5-inch drop on the front, so we are going to get started here on the rear. So I'll show you what we got to do. I've already got the driver's side done, so got this wheel about ready to take off, and what we got to do, so get that off, we have a coil spring that we obviously have to get off, and have that bump stop there that we have to take off. We're going to be doing a C notch, a small notch in this. I do have a C notch ordered. Actually just came in today, and it is a bolt-in C notch, and it's just a mini notch. It's not the full notch, but I'm going to be using a bolt-in rather than one of the big full monster notches that you weld in, just for the simple fact that if I want to go back and do an airbag suspension and put that big notch in, I don't have to cut out the mini notch. I will just be able to unbolt it, and I won't have to cut out as much of the frame. So I'm going to do that. So get that bump stop off, get the old coil springs off, which are going to be a real pain in the butt. The other side, I ended up basically using a breaker bar and a piece of pipe on the breaker bar and turning them until the bolts snapped, which made things much easier. These things have not been off in almost 60 years, I guess. So they're all original. So I've got to take that off. After I get that off, I will then have to take those U-bolts out that hold the axle to the trailing arm. I tried to get those off on the other side, and it's just easier. Take the cutoff wheel and cut off both sides of that U-bolt, and then use a air chisel and just drive them out the bottom, and was able to get those off much faster that way than trying to do that. So what I'm going to work on now is getting that bump stop off first, and then I'll move on to the coil springs, and then we'll do the U-bolt. And that should be about all we need to get off, so we can start lining up our C-notch kit and cutting the frame where we need to put that. So we'll do that, and I'll come back to you. All right, so got the spring off. I ended up, the bottom one started coming out, and it got about 3/4 of the way out and just locked up. So I just took a Sawzall and was able to get under there and cut the bolt off right there. Scratched the trailing arm a little bit, but it is not harmed. The top one, basically same thing. It started spinning and I got it out probably about 3/4 weight, but then that one just snapped off. So what I was talking about these old U-bolts is I am not going to get those out. So I just took a little die grinder with the cutoff wheel and put it on there, and just takes a couple minutes on each side. Zip, zip, and you're done. Now I will take my air chisel. I'll try to film it, I don't know if I can, but you can just drive those out really easily with an air chisel. And then you can move on to your next step, which is going to be getting that bump stop off. So let's see if we can get those U-bolts. All right, so the filming of the U-bolt removal didn't go very well one-handed, but as soon as I set the camera down, I was able to get those bolts driven out. That's what they look like, and as you can tell, it's probably never coming off there. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put this lowering block in the U-bolt, just so I can have the rear axle tied to the trailing arm before I get everything too loosened up. I'm just going to put it on there temporarily. So I'm going to get that on. This is the kit. I ordered this from Speedway. It is a 2-inch lowering block. And it's funny, it comes from Speedway, but then I open up the package and it's actually yet another CPP part. So this is, I guess you would say, the CPP 2-inch lowering block. Comes with 2 lowering blocks, 2 U-bolts, 4 nuts, and 4 washers. And it goes on exactly like you would think it would. That just goes in between your trailing arm, your axle perch, and then you put your U-bolt in, put your nuts and washers on the bottom side of that. I have not opened up the kit yet. I know that there are some shock relocation brackets, and the shock brackets on these they bolt to the bottom of that U-bolt. So I don't have those on yet, but like I said, I'm just putting them on temporarily, and then we will see where those shock relocation brackets go in relation to that stock bracket, and if we even use that. I'm not sure yet, but we'll get that on, and then I'll go ahead and get this bump stop off, and I'll show you how I do that. All right, so as far as getting these rivets out, the factory metal in the rivets actually isn't too tough, but what I've found works best for me is take a little flapper wheel on like an angle die grinder or whatever you got, and kind of try to flatten those rivets off just so you get a little flat spot on. Then take a 1/4-inch drill bit, or whatever size. You don't have to use a monster drill bit. You just have to drill probably about the depth of the frame. I left that top one not drilled yet so you can see what I was talking about flattening them off. But you get those drilled out, and then you can take a air chisel and just start at the top and start shearing down, and then the whole head will pop off, and then usually it'll pop out the back, or you can take the air chisel and just kind of push it out. But that should get those loose. I'll go ahead and get this last one drilled and see what we got. All right, we are back. I have everything unboxed from the Speedway 5-inch rear drop kit, and surprise, surprise, I open it up, it's all CPP stuff again. So everything on this truck is basically gonna be CPP, it seems like. So I'll go over the parts we got here. First, we got the adjustable track bar, and then there is a shim that goes under the driver's side between the coil spring and the U-bolt, or not the coil spring, I'm sorry, the trailing arm. This here is the other side. It goes under the passenger side, and from what I understand, and we'll see when we get more into it, is that this adjustable rear track bar ties the trailing arm of the passenger side into the frame, rather than the stock configuration where the trailing arm goes from the rear end to the frame. So that's the parts for that. Then we've got our drop shocks, also from CPP. We got our coil spring cups. The ones with the threaded insert go on the bottom, so you can run the bolt up from the bottom. Those are the top cups. Then we have the 5-inch drop springs. Then we have the shock relocation brackets. I'm assuming the big ones go on the bottom, since they have the holes for the U-bolts. These go on the top. To my surprise, they actually included instructions with the CPP kit. Color me shocked. So anyway, got all that. I'm gonna get as much put on as I can, and I'm waiting on one thing for the C-notch, and I will mention something about the C-notch. I'll show it to you here. This is the C-notch I got, just a real basic, cheap C-notch. I'll bring it into the shop here. It seems like several people sell these. They are just a bolt-in, but what I will tell you is if you look online at Jegs, that is not where I ordered this. I ordered mine off of Amazon. The one on Jegs is on sale right now for $149. Uses this exact same picture as the one I got on Amazon. The one I got on Amazon is $60 or $65. I can't remember. It's right in around the $60 range. So you can save yourself $100 if you're just getting a cheap small notch just by going on Amazon and getting it there. It's the same thing. So the welds look pretty good on it. I think it'll do just fine. And it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bolts. So it's going to bolt through the frame 8 times, I believe. It'll be plenty sturdy enough, and I think we'll be good to go. So I'll go ahead and get started, do as much as I can tonight, and see how far we get. All right, so I got the coil springs on both sides. So I got to looking at that kit, and for the adjustable track bar or panhard bar, there is a spacer. So it goes on the driver's side. And I just put it under the lowering block there. Now there is the shock relocation kit. So these, according to the directions, just go on just like this with that shock facing outward, the shock hole. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on and get these nuts on this U-bolt snugged up in there, and we'll see how that fits. Okay, got that driver side buttoned up. Now I'm going to put on the track bar mount. It looks like, from what I can reason, is the orientation looks like this with a hole up at the top. So it's going to go in there below that spacer. Just like that. That way that track bar can bolt to it. And then that U-bolt should just go right down in there. And then on the bottom side of that, what we'll do is we'll get that in. Then we've got the shock relocation mount. It'll sit just like that with the hole on the inside and go up just like that against that. And we'll get that all bolted up. Then this part will be about taken care of. We'll have to do the top side, and then also we'll have to do the C-notch. I don't have any worries that I can get that cut out there. And then centering the rear end and getting that track bar set, we should be about good. So I'll get this buttoned up. This is probably about all I'm going to do tonight, and I'll probably start working on this again tomorrow. Hey guys, another day in the shop. It's the next day. So where I left off last night was I got that track bar and U-bolt on the passenger side of the truck and got it ready for the track bar. Now I went ahead and threw the wheels back on last night after I got the springs and U-bolts back in. I did snug them up. I will have to take those loose when I go to center the rear end and put the track bar on to adjust it. But I'll go ahead and show you. It is pretty low. It's lower than I expected. Now, I do not have the shocks on yet, which, I mean, that probably won't help a lot, but it is sitting much lower than it was. And just looking, probably hard to see from the video, but the front end is actually sitting up a little higher now. I know that'll probably go down once I drop the motor and the front clip and hood on, but right now I guess we'll just have to see. I might end up having to take those blocks out if it's sitting too low. I don't want a truck that looks like it's taking a dump, or one of those like Carolina squatter trucks. So what we're going to work on today, I'm going to pull these wheels back off since I can see what it looks like. We are going to put these shock relocation brackets on, and the way those work is, I figured it out last night before I left. The original shock mounts are riveted in just with those same rivets that everything else. On this side they're like that. It'll be the opposite on the other side. So what you got to do is pop those rivets out, and then these new brackets, it comes with a bolt kit, and these new brackets will bolt on in place of where those holes are for those rivets. So I'm going to get that done. Probably try to work on the C-notch as well. I can get those shocks loosely on, and then obviously I had to get that track bar off. I don't know exactly how hard that's going to be, but I do have a tool that I'm going to break out and show you guys when I get to that part that'll help get that off. One of my new favorite tools, so I'll show you that when we get there, but I'll go ahead and get these rivets ground off, drilled out, and popped out so I can get these shock relocation brackets in. All right, guys, I got the upper shock relocation brackets in. Show you those. Pretty easy to do. Just get those rivets out, bolt those in. So what I'm going to work on next is I have my C-notch here, and just reading over the directions. It does have, on this side, it has 2 holes right there, and underneath here where the track bar sits, there are 2 rivets. So I've got to get those out of that track bar mount. So whenever I put this C-notch back on, there's some bolts that'll go up through those rivet holes, and we'll tighten that back down. So I'll get that done. I've got it roughly marked out here. I'm going to double check myself, and I'm going to cut on the narrow side and then go back with my grinder and grind out any extra I need. It did mention in the instructions there are some rivets underneath the cross member here. There's one right there, and there's one right here. It says you might have to grind those to get clearance for that bracket to sit up there right. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to work on that, get those rivets out for the track bar, and do some cutting with the Sawzall. If it gets too hard, I'll get out the plasma cutter, but I think I'll be able to get through it with that Sawzall just fine. So we'll see how that goes. All right, back on the C-notch. I got my slot cut out. It fits in there pretty good. The rivets for the trailing arm bracket, I did have to remove both of those. And also, to get this C-notch to fit flush, I did have to remove the 2 rivets that are underneath that coil plate, the reinforcement plate. So we'll be putting some bolts through there to stiffen that back up. But I got this all cut out, and I'm happy with the way it fits, so I'm going to clamp it in there and mark my holes, and we'll get to drilling and bolting that thing up. All right, got the C-notch done. Turned out pretty good. It wasn't too bad. One thing I will note that I did have to do was on the coil brace right here, you can kind of see where I trimmed it off. That, after getting it up there and fitting it, that was holding the whole thing out just a little bit. So I just took an angle grinder with a flapper wheel and ground that off flush at that line where it meets up. But it bolted up real nice. The holes for the trailing arm fit exactly. And I did have to take both the rivets off of the coil brace, cross member brace there. But what I will say is there's an extra bolt in this kit you do not use for this C-notch, and that is because the bolt hole, there's 2 bolt holes on the front plate, and the back bolt hole, that is the hole that your coil spring bolt goes up through. Now, since that C-notch did space that down, I think that's 1/4 inch plate, I did have to get a longer bolt because the bolt that came with the coil springs would not work. It was a little too short to get the washer, lock washer nut on there. So I did have to put a longer bolt in there, but everything bolted up nice. I checked the travel on the rear end, and it goes up in that C-notch nicely. So that is all I'm going to do on this side for tonight. I probably won't show the other side because it's going to be exactly the same, but I will show the trailing arm. And I did get the bolt loose on the back of the rear end. I am going to soak that bolt down in some oil and let it sit overnight. So when I come out tomorrow and try to finish this up, hopefully I'll be able to get that off pretty easy. Hey guys, welcome back. It is, I guess, day 3 of this project on the lowering and C-notching the rear end on this red 66. I mentioned in a video, or a part of this video just a little bit earlier, that I was going to show you a new tool that I got that I really like, especially for working on these old trucks. Have problems with bolts being rusty and can't get them out. So I'm going to show you this little tool here. This is on my Christmas wish list. My wife got it for me on Amazon. It's basically an induction heater, and you can see the little coil. It comes with several coils. You can buy extra coils. Runs on 120 volt, so you don't need anything special. And you just plug it in, put your bolt inside of that loop, and through the wonders of electricity, it heats up your bolt. So I'm working here on this trailing arm before I start on the other side C-notch, and I'm going to get that heated up, see if I can get it broke loose, and I'll show you guys what it looks like when it gets heated up. And some of these big bolts, they do take a little bit to get heated up, but it really makes it a lot easier, and you're not setting anything on fire. So let me get that heated up and show you what it looks like. All right, I got it going. Hopefully you can hear me over the fan, but you can see that nut's starting to turn red hot there. I mean, not much to it. You just hold it on there. I'll let that get all heated up. I couldn't even after soaking it in oil, I couldn't get that nut and bolt broke loose. So you can see it heating up good there. I'm going to get this broke loose here in just a minute. And here we are about 30 seconds later. Pretty much got that thing off. You can probably see the smoke coming off of it, but that is a very, very handy tool. I think I can't remember what the name brand of it is. They sell a name brand one. This is I guess you'd say a cheap Chinese one. I think it was about 180 bucks on Amazon, but man, does it come in handy when you need to break one of those really big or just really old rusty bolts. So you might look into getting one of those for your workshop. All right, so got the other C-notch done. It's done on both sides, and got the new track bar in. Do not have it tightened up yet. So when you do these, you need to center your rear end, and you do that with the track bar. So what I did was I put the track bar in. I've already got it centered, but you measure right over your axle from the frame, and got about 9 1/4 there. Go over here to this other side. Sorry about that. And over there, you got right at 9 1/4 there. So it is pretty close. I'm gonna call that good. Really, the only thing I have left, I've got to tighten up all the U-bolts and stuff now. Left it kind of loose, just so I could get that rear end centered, and then get the shocks in, and this drop will be about done. All right, so I got the shocks on. I need to go back and put a little tag on the video. You'll see it in the earlier part. I got the shocks on and ended up, I had the top brackets on backwards, so my shocks would not reach the bottom brackets. So I did have to flip those around, no big deal. Also, I ended up taking out the 1-inch spacers in the middle of that, or I'm sorry, the 2-inch spacers. So it's just 5-inch drop for now. In the middle of that, I figured maybe the shocks weren't reaching bottom mounts because of that extra 2 inches. After flipping the brackets around, I still don't know that the shocks will reach all the way if I put the blocks back in, but everything is all done, all tidied up, so it looks pretty good. It's kind of hard to tell. You can't get a real wide angle in the shop here, but it's sitting almost level. So once I get the motor and transmission dropped in, it should, bring that front down. just a little bit, but it'll still be 4.5 inch on the front, 5 inch in the back. So it might have a little bit of rake, but anyway, I'm happy with it. It took me 3 afternoons. It really wasn't too bad. It's just a lot of little work. Another thing I will mention is in the bottom shock mounts. I don't know why CPP does this, but they supply you with hardware. The studs that go in the bottom of those shock mounts, the stud is bigger than the hole. So the brackets they provide, you have to go in and drill them out. I just used one of those like conical step bits, and I had to go up 2 hole sizes just to get the studs to fit. I think it'd make more sense if they, just made the hole the size that their stud is. So just be aware of that if you do this, that you are going to have to drill that bottom hole out. But anyway, that is the end of the lowering of the back. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully it helps somebody, and I hope you come back and join me next time.